Hi, thanks for joining me for another video from Counselor Tips. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about assessment and diagnosis. Most people hear those topics and are like, hopefully I can kind of clear up the confusion, invite you into enjoyment of learning about assessing and diagnosing, help you understand the differences, and help you to utilize what you learn in this video in a way that is thorough and beneficial to client care. So hang in there as we cover these topics today. Assessment. So most assessment is obtained in the context of diagnosing. Assessment can be used to determine the nature, the cause, the prognosis, and the progression of a problem. It is also best practice when assessing to include the client's strengths. During assessment, you'll also want to include the personalities and situations involved. You want to focus on the functionality of your client, such as person in situation or person in environment. The most widely accepted definition of a diagnosis is from the medical model, where the process of identifying a problem is in the social, mental, and medical components. Diagnosing. Diagnosing is both process and product. We want to examine parts of the problem for delineation of the nature, organization, and interrelationship between the process and the product, so we can arrive at the solution, which is generally a treatment plan. Remember, symptoms that border with normality, that are pathologized, expand the definition of mental disorder and reduce the realm of normality. In other words, everything is not diagnosable. Diagnostic process in counseling is a result of the counseling relationship. Here are some things we know about therapeutic relationships. They start with the unknown. It's all about getting to know the person, and diagnostics are always present. We examine information. What is the client saying in the context of the shared information? We want an accurate definition of the problem, allowing the problem to guide the diagnosis and intervention, not the other way around. Utilize the client's beliefs and their worldview. Awareness and avoidance of value conflicts is paramount at this point. Address and utilize the client's cultural customs and influences. The current DSM describes and defines culturally bound syndromes affecting the diagnosis and assessment process. Make sure that you consult the DSM as you're looking at the influence culture plays on the client before haphazardly diagnosing them. We want to address the problems that affect the activities of daily living and provide continued support when we are looking at the client's strengths as well as their own resources. We want to slow down and not rush to come to some conclusion. Be fully present and listen to the client's story long before you provide the client a diagnosis. Nowadays, with the internet, clients often come in where they've self-diagnosed themselves. We know about that. Or they're coming in with a diagnosis from a previous provider, which may be inaccurate. So we want to focus on listening in the client's story intently long before we diagnose them. As counselors, it is important to maintain a consistent pattern of observation. We want to observe the client's behaviors and symptoms to accurately provide, change, or eliminate a diagnosis. We want to look at what causes and constitutes a mental disorder. This will more than likely include distress and disability, leading to harmful dysfunction, abnormality, or aberration. Accurately diagnosing assists counselors in helping clients be able to develop and implement solutions, which is generally shown in a treatment plan. Next, we'll talk about subtypes, specifiers, severity, and provisional diagnosing. So before I get into subtypes, specifiers, and severity, let's talk about provisional diagnoses. A provisional diagnosis is where a person appears to be meeting the criteria listed in the DSM, but we want to suspend the actual diagnosis until we hear more of the client's story and evaluate their symptoms further. Once the criteria is confirmed, then we can remove the provisional status of the diagnosis. Subtypes. So with subtyping in a diagnosis, you want to specify whether, and you only want to choose one subtype. With a specifier, you want to specify if. With specifiers, you are to choose as many as are applicable to that diagnosis. With severity, you want to choose the specific current severity. This is choosing the actual current level of symptomology. Generally, we stick with mild, moderate, or severe. Think about when you're adding a severity specifier to the diagnosis, where a person comes in, let's say, with social anxiety disorder, severe, and through treatment, you can change the severity specifier throughout treatment, and it moves from severe to moderate and then across time to mild before discharge. Think about how much that helps support your treatment interventions or your counseling interventions with that client. Now we'll talk a little bit about when we're diagnosing how to do some specific things. So the first one is to rule out another diagnosis. This is when the client may meet many of the symptoms, but not enough to make a diagnosis at that time. It should be considered further. However, we want to try and rule it out. So we will have disorders that are similar to one another or under the same umbrella, like mood disorders, where they appear very similar, but they won't necessarily meet all the criteria. And that's a great implement or tool for you to move on to another diagnosis that is similar to see if the client then meets all the criteria necessary to make a different diagnosis than what you suspected. Traits. The person doesn't meet the criteria. However, the client presents with many of the features of the diagnoses. An example might be the person has borderline traits or cluster B traits. And so this is something that you can make a notation of. But traits are when they don't meet the full criteria, but they have a lot of the presenting kind of symptoms or behaviors that we want to make note of, that they have some of these traits. It can influence how we provide treatment or define objectives and interventions while working with a client. By history. So we want to note by history when we haven't necessarily diagnosed the client, but previous records from another provider or hospital indicate a diagnosis the client comes to us with. Remember, records can be inaccurate or outdated, such as a person who may have alcohol dependency in their history, but they may have remained abstinent and been in remission for such a long time that alcohol dependency would no longer show up as a diagnosis. By self-report. This one always amuses me. Hopefully it's not that they've looked on the internet and diagnosed themselves, but by self-report. The client claims they have a diagnosis, but it is currently unsubstantiated. These can be inaccurate. It can be a family member has diagnosed them saying that, oh, you behave like you have bipolar, or a person evaluates that they have fluctuating moods, but they don't understand that it is a regular occurrence to have fluctuating moods, but they see that as drastic, so they call themselves bipolar. When you have rule out traits, history, or by self-report, these are not necessarily noted along with the diagnoses, but you can note them in the case note and then put next to the notation, was it a self-diagnosis? Was it by report from which provider? Was it some traits that you identified? So you can always include this in documentation, but not with the formal diagnosis itself. And as always, remember, if a client is diagnosed correctly, it can be the beginning of a different and better future for them. It can provide an opportunity where they have supportive treatment, where their objectives and interventions actually match what's happening in their life. They can make progress. They can have a positive view of themselves and the counseling experience. They can build on successes and continue to make progress even when they're not in counseling. They can receive correct medication that can in itself provide relief from symptomology or, coupled with counseling, help sustain long-term progress. If a client has been diagnosed incorrectly, it can be harmful because treatment can go nowhere. They may be prescribed incorrect medication that doesn't reduce symptomology. They can have a negative view of themselves and the counseling experience, make little to no progress, and leave the experience feeling hopeless. Sometimes when a person has been diagnosed incorrectly, it can be stigmatizing and maybe has led to too much or incorrect treatment. An incorrect diagnosis is more harmful than it is helpful. Err on the side of caution. Just because you can diagnose doesn't mean you initially should. So let's slow down, hear the client's full story, and put the presenting problem in the correct perspective, evaluating all the symptomology, and getting the client the correct diagnosis right from the start. Thank you for joining me on this brief video on assessing and diagnosing. If you feel like this video could benefit someone else who's just a little overwhelmed or confused about the different aspects of diagnosing, please consider sharing it with them. We all need to grow. I still grow. And if you find that you're learning from this video and this channel, please consider subscribing to it and share it with someone else so they too can learn. The whole point of us and having this counseling community is so we learn from one another. Thank you for hanging in there with this video with me today, and I hope to see you soon.